Okay, good morning, everybody. Apologies first up for the moment. We are having a few little technical issues with one of our guests from Canada, with Nina. We're going to try and work through those as best we can. But for now, you have these two older, uglier looking heads on the screen here for the moment. So we will get started, and hopefully we can sort that out as we move in. So welcome to the webinar for today. Now, look, I'm not sure about all of you, but I kind of feel it's getting a little bit old, the way that we're being told that these are unprecedented times, or that we're all in this together, or that every business on the face of the earth is here to help us now. It's really, really nice to know that we had the support of everybody globally. But after a few months of this, I feel like people are starting to, it's wearing a little bit thin. And I'm wondering whether maybe your employees are also feeling this same way. And the question I've got for you today is, have you checked in on them lately? And great segue to say that maybe now it is a great time to do that. So that's kind of like the topic of today's webinar. So I'll do some quick introductions. So as usual, you have myself, Chris Lukianenko, host of the Intelligent Workplace podcast. Joining me today is Nina Purewal. So she's someone who I feel very comfortable talking about these topics with, even though we've never actually met face to face. She's an amazing woman, and if you want to know her backstory, you can check out her book. It's called Let That Shit Go, or you can even listen to the interview that I did with her on our Intelligent Workplace podcast. So welcome, Nina. She probably can't say anything right now because she's still working through those technical issues, but we will get back to her, I promise. And then next up, we have our LiveTiles Co-Founder, Peter Nguyen-Brown. Now, Pete took some time out a few years ago to take a bit of a deep dive into happiness, which led him to on a bit of a well-being mission, both inside and outside of LiveTiles. And I'll get Pete to tell us a little bit about that story. But for now, welcome aboard, Pete.
Morning, Chris. Hello, everyone.
Everything's working great from Pete's home. That's fantastic. Okay, so I say this every week, but if you've been with us previously, which I can see a few names that look familiar, this is LiveTiles. So we're a global company specializing in employee collaboration and communication software, services, and AI for the workplace. And we are littered all around the globe, everybody working from home these days. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, once again, this is a conversation and not death by PowerPoint. So we'll do our best to answer your questions along the way if you have them. So you can use the app to ask a question, and I'll field those for you and pass them on to our experts here today. But what we'll be going through is we're going to talk a little bit about the backstories of my two guests here today. We're going to talk about the mental health challenge that we're currently facing sort of as a result of the coronavirus. In response to that, Nina's going to give us some tips for finding calm during times of chaos. We're then going to have a bit of a chat about the LiveSmiles movement and what that's up to, and then talk about some technology that we're developing that can help you with that whole idea of checking in with your staff. And then we'll talk about what's next, and then finish off with a bit of a breathing exercise, so something a little bit different we'll be doing today. So time to hear some backstories. Now, I'm hoping that Nina, I'll see if I can unmute her. Maybe she can unmute herself, but
yeah.
Well, excellent, we've got it. So look, there are a few reasons that I asked my guests to be a part of this webinar today. They've both got really interesting backstories. How do they found themselves to really dive deeper into the world of well-being, mindfulness, the search for happiness? So I'll get them to give you a bit of a quick overview of their backstory. So Nina, hopefully this is working for you, and you can give us yours first.
Yeah, sure. So my backstory is, well, it starts off not so happy. When I was 16, I went through a pretty significant tragedy, and I lost my dad and my brother. And that's kind of where my whole mindfulness, meditation, spiritual journey began at 16. And I had various therapists and counselors, but it was just the one thing that always kept me grounded. So I kind of continued life as normally as I could, went to high school and got my business degree and had a great career in sales and marketing, worked on many global brands. And then in 2010, kind of hit a peak point in my career just due to the corporate grind, and decided to do something very drastic. I left my career and moved to California. And studied spirituality and mindfulness and meditation for an entire year, completely unplugged, got rid of my the addiction to my email, and came back, worked in corporate for a little longer, and then decided that I really wanted to combine, my experience in corporate and also the learnings I had on, mindfulness and meditation, and how to really find that calm in all the chaos. So with that, I started my own business, and I now do mindfulness workshops for numerous companies, and recently launched a book, which is now a bestseller, which is great, with a co-author.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. With my co-author, Kate, who also founded a company in mental health. And we are just continuing to spread the word and trying to keep everyone, calm and peaceful in this crazy time.
Can I ask you a quick question? Which was harder, having to leave all of your devices behind on your journey, or having to homeschool your children now?
Definitely homeschool. There's no question.
Wow. I'm hearing you. And Pete, can you give us a bit of your backstory, please?
Yeah, sure. So I've been, I guess, running businesses for about 18 years since I was 25. So along that journey, seen a lot of different things and a bunch of different experiences. Prior to that, I'd studied software engineering, so I come very much from a tech background. But as my life's progressed, reason for being and purpose has become more obvious in recent years in particular, and I'll tell a bit more about that later on. But really, yeah, I've got a huge responsibility with a team of 200 people across the globe. And whether it was 2,000 or 20 people, doesn't really matter. We all have a responsibility to support and look after each other, and sort of learn a few things along the way, and learn a lot from people like Nina as well. So good to be here, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I've got to say, Pete's one of the most amazing blokes I've met in terms of my business career. Someone who is so busy and into so many things, can still find time during his busy day to talk to everybody, and it really does make a difference, especially during these times. Not that I'm sucking up, but let's move it on. So let's have a bit of a chat about the mental health challenge. Look, I don't need to quote any statistics to you all today to help you understand the fact that we have got serious mental health problems in society, and that they are on the increase. And all signs point to COVID-19 being the cause of maybe another wave of issues that we are yet to deal with. On the screen here, this is Simone. She looks like a really happy-go-lucky person who, looks like she's got it all together. But put the camera away from her, and what is she really like? And I'll put it to you, Pete. This is a big issue for businesses who have staff who are working from their kitchens or their bedrooms or the lounge rooms right now. You only see Simone when she wants you to, and it's very easy to put on a brave face, put on some nice clothes, do your hair, all that sort of thing, and have almost two personas. You've got one on the camera and one off the camera. Is it a real challenge in your opinion? And what other challenges are we facing right now with this whole work from home thing?
Yeah, look, it is, and I think it's, over the last few weeks in particular, it's been pretty well documented in a lot of different ways. I'm sure people have read and experienced different things over the last few weeks about how to deal with this and what things we can do. I think in times like this, well-being issues are accelerated by virtue of the fact we're isolated. I think this is, all the data will back that up, which also means that we need to accelerate our well-being initiatives, as businesses and as people, and for a lot of companies that's a bigger challenge than for others. And again, I'll tell a bit more about our well-being movement called LiveSmiles shortly, but well-being is not necessarily an intrinsic part of the workplace in many organizations, even though there are attempts and people are trying. So look, that's a challenge. How do we actually accelerate the well-being initiatives? And the fact is, we're going to have to, employers and employees alike. I think also that the way people are used to checking in with each other is typically triggered by seeing somebody in the office and saying hello and how was your weekend, how are you feeling, or a phone call. A lot of people will struggle to do the things that are instinctive to them because those triggers aren't happening. And so that to me is a big thing, because it's going to be a shift in our behavioural patterns and our mental patterns, and that also takes constant reminding to each other and ourselves to do the things that we used to do face to face. We now need to do a slightly different way, and so that's a challenge, I think, behaviourally. And I think ultimately we've never had a greater responsibility to the well-being of each other and ourselves than ever before. It's actually, as difficult a time as it is, I'm so optimistic about how this crisis will actually make us better as a society and as people, through the process, despite it's going to create challenges in the short term. So yeah, it's real, and we need to react very, very quickly.
I take your point around the whole the water cooler chats don't happen anymore, and I started off during this whole process of feeling funny about contacting someone who I would just literally have a chat, you know, next to my desk in the office previously. Now I've got to almost schedule some time to talk to them. But on the flip side, I find that maybe when I do schedule that time to talk to them, it's meaningful, and we're really having a great conversation. It's not quite so casual, but it's really meaningful now. And so I'm, you know, a bit of yin and yang sort of with that sort of situation. So I'm with you. I'm hopeful that the changes that we're seeing, you know, the way we work now will make things better. Absolutely. So, mate, thanks for the background on that. Now I want to bring Nina in now. Here she is on the screen in a beautiful two-tone pink and purple colour I put her in. And how's that? And you know, obviously we're hearing this every day. The world's in chaos. We're all trying to find our way through, and it is difficult. It is a bit of a new normal. And so I wanted to get Nina to offer up some pieces of advice from her own personal journey, and how we can help others get through this in an okay manner. So Nina, I've got your tips here on the screen. I'd just like you to talk them through for me if you could, please. So awareness.
Yeah, sure. So sorry guys, I've been playing around with my computer and my phone. I don't know why the screen is not working, but it is what it is.
Well, you are on the screen right now
I'm
anyway.
on the screen.
Look at that.
There you go. So awareness is kind of the first step, and we talk about this a lot in the book, but essentially what I mean when I say awareness is awareness of the thoughts that are going on in our mind. So we think between 50,000 and 70,000 thoughts a day, and that averages out to 35 to 42 thoughts a minute. So our mind is constantly going, and we're actually aware of less than 1% of them. Okay, so we're constantly kind of going down the rabbit hole with our thoughts, and we're unaware of what's happening. So the first step, and there's lots of different techniques on how to do this, is just to be aware of what is swirling in your mind. And doing that gets you, gives you a little bit of space between all the thoughts that come through and all the stress that induces. And when the thoughts come up and you're aware of it, you can kind of put it in a bit of a category and say, okay, now I'm stressing about this, and give it a little space versus getting completely engrossed in those thoughts that are constantly swirling. So I'd say awareness of your thoughts. And it's like a muscle. The more that you practice this, the more you're going to be able to leverage it. But awareness of your thoughts is really, really key, because a lot of us, again, we're thinking, studies show that 99% of our thoughts we're not even aware of. So once we become aware of them, we can do something about it. The second one is around media, especially in this time right now. One of the biggest pieces of advice that I've been giving is limit your media intake. Because this is really a key contributor to stress. People are checking their phones the first thing they wake up in the morning. They're checking, CNN or whatever it is, before they go to bed at night, BBC. And so what you can do is just keep informed. I'm not saying, completely be oblivious to what's going on. Keep informed with the facts and the data that you need, but don't inundate yourself with all the media frenzy that's going on right now, especially before bedtime. Perhaps, what I've been doing recently is I've been keeping my phone downstairs before I go to bed upstairs. So, my last 15 minutes before bed is quiet time. And when I wake up too, I'm not tempted to grab my phone. I meditate instead, or, have some time to myself in my own head. Because the minute you start checking your phone, you're just already in the outside world. So media is the second thing. The third thing is acceptance. So there's a whole chapter in the book around acceptance, and essentially the crux of it is categorizing everything in your life in what you can control and what you can't control. Because so much of our life, especially right now, we cannot control. And when we recognize this, a lot of that 50 to 70,000 thoughts that are going on a day are things that we cannot control. And what this does is when we stew or ruminate about things that we can't control, it just adds to our stress, and it is an energy suck. Because it's not something we can do anything about. So especially in this situation with everything going on right now, there's a lot that is out of our hands. And when we recognize that a thought is coming up and it's about something we can't control, like we're in quarantine right now, then we can kind of put it in that bucket and let it go versus stew on it and try to figure out how to fix what we can't control. And if you can control it, by all means, you know, make all the changes that you can to have influence, to have, you know, impact. But if you can't control it, then, you know, just kind of put it in that bucket and let it go. When I studied in California, one of my teachers categorized thinking about things we can't control as dead thoughts. You know, they're not going to propel you forward in any way. They're not going to drive your efficiency, your focus. So just, you know, let it go. The fourth thing is, you know, feel it. And there's, you know, saying that's been going around, feel it to heal it. And I think right now there are so many emotions going, you know, on with people and their work and their families, and, you know, with everything going on, there's lots of stuff coming up for people. And, you know, if I can just expand on that specifically for a second, when I studied in California and I did unplug, one of the biggest learnings for me was that when I don't have any distractions, when I don't have, you know, my phone or email or, you know, Netflix or people to call, shit comes up, stuff comes up for you. And that is kind of a mini version of what's happening right now. People can't go out and meet friends. They can't watch sports. They can't, you know, play sports and do all the things that they used to. So stuff that might be rooted deep in there is coming up. So feel it, honor it. You know, Kate and I are huge advocates of, you know, mindfulness isn't just about having a quiet mind. You need to feel it. You need to go through the motions. You need to, you know, understand everything that you are being faced with in order to let it go. Otherwise, you're just suppressing. So the fourth tip is just to feel it, and honor everything that is coming up for you. If you need to have a good cry or write in a journal or talk to someone or vent, whatever it is, do it. The fifth one is all about judgment, and, you know, not having any judgment towards yourself around being the best employee, being the best homeschooling parent. You know, everybody's trying to balance this whole working from home, you know, homeschooling, cooking more. The snacks thing I hear is driving like every parent crazy. Kids asking for snacks every 5 minutes.
I'm hearing you.
Yeah. And so you know, just have no judgment around, like, don't judge yourself if, you know, you couldn't get to that homeschool lesson today, or, you know, you were planning on working for 7 hours and you worked for 5 hours, or, you know, if you needed to take a break in the middle of the day to go for a walk. Self-judgment can be really self-deprecating, and it can really take away from your focus and your efficiency. You know, same as guilt, self-guilt. So just when you feel like, you know, doing something different, or, you know, getting out of your routine or whatnot, then don't judge yourself about anything going on right now. Don't feel like a bad employee. Don't feel like a bad mom. You know, you got to just do your best and keep moving forward. So that's number 5. Number 6 is schedule and being in a state of flow. So having a schedule, I found, you know, a lot of people are finding really helpful. I know the first 2 weeks of quarantine were just, you know, a shit show in our house. It was like trying to homeschool, trying to work. Everything was all over the place. And it was like, I'm trying to homeschool and I'm checking my emails at the same time. And then after about 2 weeks, when we realized, okay, this is actually going to be here for, you know, a month plus, let's make a schedule. So, you know, we put a schedule on the fridge, and now every day we kind of know what's happening. My daughter knows when she's getting homeschooled. We know when we're having meals. We also know, you know, I know when I get to spend a good chunk of time on my business, versus trying to do everything all at once. And what this does as well is it allows you to compartmentalize, because when you can compartmentalize what you are doing, you can drive, again, focus and efficiency, because you don't want to be trying to homeschool and think about work, and then trying to, you know, respond to an email when your kid's asking you a question. You know, try to have a schedule around what you're doing. I know it's easier said than done, but if you have a bit of a schedule, then at least you won't feel so scattered throughout your day. That being said, I also think it's important to be in a state of flow, and there's a lot of yoga practitioners that are talking about this now, just listening to your body, listening to your mind. You know, if you have a home workout routine and you've done it 5 days in a row and you don't feel like doing it the 6th day, listen to your body. It's okay. So be in a state of flow, and again, don't feel any guilt around that. So that's number 6, is, you know, have a schedule, but also be in a state of flow. Number 7 is perspective and gratitude. And so perspective is, again, it's a whole chapter in the book, but this is all about, we talk about looking at life from going from a micro perspective, which is what we're so used to. You know, we get up in the morning, we're in our own little bubble, you know, we're behind on our email, we got to find matching socks. Well, we don't really have to find matching socks now, but you know, there's a million things that are on our minds when we wake up, right? We got to homeschool. And so one thing that you can do is go from micro to macro. So try to look at life from the big picture, you know, making sure you're pausing to just appreciate all the things that are going right now. You know, I know there's a lot of things that people are finding challenging, but what is going on in your life that is going right? Maybe it's that everybody in your family is healthy. Maybe it's that, you know, you have an amazing company where you can work from home and everybody's, you know, easy to get along with. There's just so many things to be grateful for if we really focus on it. And, you know, it goes beyond writing a list of like, oh, here are things I'm grateful for. It's actually really, you know, embracing that emotion. When you feel gratitude, you know, it's like, have you ever watched a terrible news story or, you know, gone to a funeral and suddenly you're so grateful for your family or for life itself? It's like when you feel those moments of gratitude, you really want to embrace that feeling and not just kind of, you know, have a list that you're kind of checking off. Well, yeah, I'm grateful for all these things. Well, like really feel it. So perspective is a really great way, and gratitude is, you know, is an escalator to joy. So definitely, you know, doing those two things could be helpful. Number 8 is kind of interesting. It's called Forgiveness to Go. And this is something that it's a tip in our book. So our book is over 100 tips on how to find peace of mind and calm in the everyday. This is something that my co-author Kate came up with. We have a whole chapter on forgiveness, but this particular tip is all about forgiveness to go. Like if you think about takeout, like really quick forgiveness. So right now, everybody is living in close quarters. You know, so everyone's a little on edge. I've got a text from my girlfriend today saying that her husband was driving her crazy as he was eating an apple beside her because it was so loud. She's like, I seriously want to smack him right now. So everyone's on edge, right? So just if you get in a little tiff, you know, with your partner or your child, or even if you live on your own, you know, everyone's, you know, nerves are a bit shot. So if there's a few texts back and forth that it's not sitting right, you know, just let it go. This is kind of the time to like not stew on things, to forgive quickly, to let things go. Because again, forgiveness, the essence of this chapter is when you're holding on to stuff, it's affecting you, not the other person. So if you get in a little tiff, of course, if it's major, work it through. But if it's little, just let it go. The 9th one is more of a practical tip, and that is to have a calming corner. So this is something we did in the first few weeks, because we noticed, you know, anxiety is high, emotions are high. So we have a little spot in our house now where we have, you know, I have little kids books on meditation, little mindfulness flashcards. I've got, you know, aromatherapy, some crystals, you know, anything that you find calming, whether it's a candle or incense, whatever it is, have a little spot in the corner of your house. And anytime you notice, you know, emotions are running high, just go there, just take a few deep breaths. It's just great to have that physical space. And you know, they're working against me now because every like minute my daughter's like, you need to go to the calming center. So that's a really great practical tool. And the last one, of course, is my favorite, which is just breathing, taking a few really, really deep breaths. And you know, if you have a meditation practice, meditating is a really good tool right now. And, you know, breathing is so important. It connects us, it grounds us, and we have forgotten how to breathe. We basically, you know, so there was a study that we were looking at for our book where this woman coined the term sleep or email apnea. And she said, you know, she did a study where it proved that every time we open up our email, we actually stop breathing for a few seconds, like we go into stress mode, you know. So breathing is a really great way to, again, get grounded. And again, meditating, you know, we can do a whole seminar on meditating, but meditation is a great way to find your calm as well. So those are 10 tips to help you get in the moment.
Absolutely fantastic. See, everybody, that's why I invited her back on. She is just wonderful. So
Thank you.
great practical tips. I just sitting there sort of ticking them off in my mind, and that one on perspective and gratitude where you talk about, it makes you feel something. I find that when I watch a movie that's sad, I'll go and wake my children up and give them a hug. And they're like, Dad, what are you doing? It's like, oh, I just love you so much because it's made me feel, now go back to sleep.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
great stuff. Thanks, Nina, for that.
No problem.
All right. So I'm not sure, Pete, whether this is actually meant to be you sitting there in this sort of meditative state almost. It looks a little
Looks
bit,
like me.
doesn't it just? I don't know. One of our internal designers designed this image, so I'm thinking that maybe Pete was inspiration there. But look, Pete did mention earlier how he found himself immersed in, wanting to understand happiness, and that led to a movement that he started here at LiveTiles called LiveSmiles. So I thought I'd give Pete the chance, just a bit of the chance just to sort of tell everybody a little bit more about it.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I'm pretty sure that's not me. It's a very, very nice blue beard, but I think with LiveSmiles, it was really interesting, and I'll keep this story relatively short, but it like Nina, we've all gone through things of some sort that lead us to a different path and a different sort of purpose in life. At the start of 2018, I decided it was important for me to study happiness, to understand what it meant, not necessarily for my own happiness, but to understand how others feel and what drives happiness in others. I think that's a perspective we need to, as humans, better at, generally speaking. So I did a lot of research, from academic research through Harvard's Emotional Intelligence series to speaking with practitioners, speaking with lots of different people, philosophers, you name it. I think the one, I did this over about a 6-week period before I presented to the whole of company back in February 2018. The one bit which was really, really interesting in this process was when I actually interviewed my children about happiness, and they were 4 and 7 at the time. And my 4-year-old thought happiness was about candy, which was fine. I accept that as a 4-year-old. But my 7-year-old girl was starting to build a more mature brain and mindset and understanding life a bit better. And basically when I asked her, how do you make other people happy, in amongst a bit of confusion, she said, and this is perspective on the mind of a child, but it was very, very for me reaffirming in terms of understanding about happiness. And she said something along the lines of, if you see somebody who's homeless, go up to them and ask them if they're okay and how are they feeling. And then she said, and then go and get them some food or a blanket to make them feel better. And it was such a crystallizing moment for me, because what she told me in 10 seconds was what 6 weeks of research struggled to tell me through thousands of pages. And that was a simple, she basically defined empathy and compassion in 30 seconds. And the reason why it was crystallizing for me was it made me realize how instinctive it is for humans to care for each other. And I think what happens through life is that we sort of get derailed a little bit through life events, through schools, through the media, even through work. And ultimately, we come up with this concept of LiveSmiles 2 months later, which was initially for us to make wellbeing an intrinsic part of our workplace. So not to be an addition or a bolt-on or something to do in your time after work, to genuinely make it part of every discussion we have, make it part of our technology. And then secondly to that, and this is when our greater purpose was defined, was that as a business, we feel like we have a huge opportunity and responsibility to make wellbeing an intrinsic part of other companies' workplaces. And that's basically the story of LiveSmiles, and we love talking about it. We love having people like Nina on talking about this, because they're the experts. And I think the more we talk about it, the more we do, I think the quicker wellbeing will be such an important part of life, not just at home, but also in the workplace, and it should just blend in with each other. So that's the story about LiveSmiles, Chris.
Thank you very much, mate. Thanks. It's really been interesting. When someone said Pete was studying happiness, I was like, "He's what?" But you explain it in that way, and it's absolutely fantastic. I'm not sure that my daughter at that age could have been quite so articulate in her description of what happiness was. But anyway, maybe when she's a bit older. So look, LiveSmiles was the start of the movement for us, but we never sort of stopped looking for opportunities to do more. So we worked this year with Movember on a campaign. The Intelligent Workplace podcast has quite a few episodes with guests such as Nina discussing various topics in and around mental health. And Pete is very active in the community in this space personally as well. And Live Vibe is something that's very new and was born from a project that we were undertaking actually down here in the Hobart office. we're all wearing these GPS tracker devices to see how we're utilizing our working space, because we're trying to build a new space and use the space in a better way, and you know, moving furniture around and things like that. So we set these little devices up to track how we were using the space on a daily basis. But what we also did was set up a very simple bot back in at that stage in Teams that every day checked in with us and asked us how we're doing. And then what we did was we cross-referenced those responses with the way that we were moving around the office during the day to see if there was any correlation between the data. So maybe on a day, my response was, no, I'm over it today. And maybe in conjunction with that, I was, you know, maybe staying at my desk the entire day and didn't move around. So we did a bit of that work. And then COVID happened, and that fun exercise that we were undertaking just to sort of discover new things took on a bit more of a serious meeting. And instead of moving desks within the four walls and everyone being together all the time, all of a sudden we're working from, you know, kitchens, home offices, bedrooms, and we couldn't participate in those face-to-face check-ins like we talked about earlier. And much like Simone from that earlier slide, we could all hide behind technology and put on a brave face. So we've sort of taken that original idea and put a little bit more development into it and come up with this idea, which we're calling Live Vibe, which is an employee check-in tool that sits inside Teams as an app. So obviously, you know, this is where a lot of us are working and spending our time these days in Teams with this remote working model. And it helps you keep an eye on your staff who you can't physically keep an eye on. You know, we're not unique in this situation. I'm sure that many of you on this call are in similar situations in your workplace where you're working from home and you don't get to see your colleagues. So we feel like this is something that might have some legs. And so what we're sort of asking is, if you're interested in this free solution, you can jump on this link here and have a bit of a look at it, register your interest. And we strongly believe that this solution is really going to help solve some of those issues around understanding what's really going on in your employees' lives. So getting behind that facade and understanding what's affecting their lives. Pete, just wondering, mate, if you want to chime in at all on that one, or if I've perhaps said enough about it.
It's pretty self-explanatory, and to be honest, it's an extension of our LiveSmiles movement that I was speaking about before. And
correct.
There's obviously massive respect for employees' privacy, and tech is not the solution to well-being, but it's certainly something which can assist. And we'll talk more about that towards the end as well.
Cool. So what's next? I really wanted to get Pete's thoughts on, you know, how he sees things progressing, you know, post COVID-19, as we start to move into the next phase of our lives. So Pete, I'm just wondering, what do you think of the big employee well-being issues for businesses to consider in the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, I've got a few little points to quickly run through here. I spoke a bit before about isolation, and we've heard that word a lot. There are quite a few things we can do to improve people's feeling about, you know, feeling isolated. And look, again, some of these are very, very well documented now. But things like, you know, daily video conference stand-ups to Friday fun sessions with the team to, you know, lunchtime or morning sessions with an expert around mindfulness or meditation or something, you know, something that's spiritual or just healthy, exercise related. Those things are very, very easy for us to control, and we should absolutely be doing those. Also through this period of isolation, which I think is more of a short-term thing, and I think there will be a level of normality that resumes within 3 to 6 months across the workplace. But train your staff on something new. This is such a great opportunity for people to spend time learning something literally about anything. It could be work related, it could be non-work related. We have an amazing partnership with a company called Go1, who's based in Australia here, who are offering through the next few months access to all their training resources at no cost, and be very, very happy to share details with anyone on a call who wants to know more about that. But I'm doing some cool stuff in the background. I'm learning how to build a vegetable garden right now. I'm struggling a little bit, to be honest. My strawberries have been every morning, but again, it's actually helping me big time get through this. I think also one of the challenges going to be for employers and managers and employees and people in general is that we are going to go through waves of emotions and fluctuations like never before. There are going to be days we feel really good, and then the next day we may not. And this may be related to COVID, it may be related to your work arrangement. You know, there's a recession that's going to be happening, and most likely there are people are going to be laid off. It's an unpleasant time, and it's I think understanding that it's going to be waves of emotions, and not to expect you to feel good 100% of the time. In fact, it's never going to be the measure of success is not feeling happiness 100% of the time. You've got to build resilience and you've got to build strength as well in this process. And with that in mind, I think one interesting little maybe tip or advice that we're going to be actually speaking with our company about tomorrow is reconnecting your people to your purpose and the reason for being, not just from a company point of view, but from even an individual point of view. And it was 2 years ago that I actually, for the first time in my life, I can say I figured out what my purpose in life was. It was quite liberating and empowering. And I think times like this, reconnecting people back to what grounds them is really, really critical as a company, but also individually. And that's, Nina mentioned before, people being grounded is really, really important during these times. And so reconnection to purpose is really, really interesting. And then also, again, it's been touched on a little bit, but genuinely connecting people with people in this time is so important. And it sounds like a really easy thing to say, but I'll give you some examples. Create new relationships, meet new people in your workplace. We have this really cool little initiative called Phone a Colleague, where we strongly encourage, and the company does this really, really well. I'm really pleased to call someone in the company on the other side of the world or somewhere else in the country that you have never spoken to before or may not know as well as that you'd like to. And we actually encourage people to set up 30-minute meetings to not talk about work, just to talk about who you are and listen to the other person and understand more about them. It's been unbelievably successful in terms of people feeling more connected to each other and being a nice little distraction in the day as well. It's been really positive. I also, as an example, open up my Friday schedules for anyone in the business to set up time with me and talk to me, and I sit there the majority of the time listening to how they're feeling and asking questions, and again building connection intentionally is really, really important. It's not difficult. At the end of the day, we're just humans, and if we can go back to what my 7-year-old taught me a few years ago, which is being empathetic and compassionate is instinctive. It's in us all. When you push the things aside that are distracting, that we don't have control of, like Nina was saying, then empathy and compassion, I think, comes through really strongly. So building genuine human connection during these times is critical.
100%, mate. Fantastic stuff. Now, look, speaking of what's next, I thought it'd be a great time to mention Nina's previous book that you can now see there on the screen, national bestseller, and we'll send the link out to everyone on Amazon in the follow-up email.
You went
Nina,
out again.
given Chris is having some, he's having some audio challenges. I think this is a segue, Nina, to maybe talk.
Okay. Well, I love what you said, Pete, in your last segment. I think if I were ever to go back to corporate, I would come work for you, because I just think you're doing all the right things, and focusing on people, I think is so incredibly important and critical. Just coming from the corporate side, I think working in corporate 10 years ago was all about corporate social responsibility and what are you doing for the planet, and all these numerous causes that we need to fight for. But I think now, just from what I see going into companies, employees are asking, what are you doing for me? Because my stress level is at a 10, and anxiety's on the rise. Unfortunately, depression's on the rise. And so people want to know what you're doing for them. So I really commend, all of your next steps coming out of COVID. So in terms of what I think Chris asked what next steps were for me. So we launched this book about last January, so about 1.5 years ago. The next exciting steps are that we are launching some online courses, which is going to be great, basically putting each chapter into a week of a course online. And again, it's just, Kate and I are all about impact. The world is struggling right now. People are struggling right now. So any way that we can get out there, on Instagram, we're unfiltered_mindfulness. That's our hashtag. And what we're trying to do now is really understand why people are stressed out. Why is 85% of America highly stressed? Why is depression on the rise, anxiety on the rise? 44% of certain industries are the reasons why one of the main reasons why they're losing money is mental health. People are taking time off from work, more so than anything else. So, you know, why is this happening? And that's kind of the next phase. Let That Shit Go was all about the internal and all the different tips and things that you can do internally for yourself. But the next phase, and, you know, if there's a book 2 and there's talk of book 2, is, you know, what's happening externally. You know, and I can speak for myself. You know, when I first entered the workplace, there was I didn't have a laptop, nor did I have a BlackBerry, or at the time they called it Crackberry, you know, because everyone was so addicted to it. There was when you shut down at 5 o'clock, you shut down at 5 o'clock and nobody could get a hold of you. When you went on vacation, you went on vacation. Now people are just, you know, hyper connected, and the expectations of companies are high. And then there's also a bunch of worldly things going on. Like, a lot of people are experiencing, you know, climate change grief, and people are just speaking out about a lot of issues that, you know, typically, you know, weren't brought to surface. And so we want to really dig into that and understand, you know, what's the cause of this, you know, especially with teens and kids as well. It's sad to see kids so disconnected these days as well. And that's driving, you know, kids' anxiety and kids' depression. So, you know, what is happening in our world and around us that's causing this? So that's kind of what is next for us.
Hopefully you guys can hear me now, can you?
Yeah.
Excellent, great. I've just switched over microphones. So look, we try to do things a little bit differently with these comm series sessions. So when Nina often takes us all through a breathing exercise to finish the session, I thought, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Something that I've never done in any webinar that I've ever attended. So I thought we'd give it a bit of a go. So what do we need to do, Nina?
Okay, so a lot of people say, and you'll probably see this a lot, oh, just take a couple deep breaths. Well, how we're breathing and the technique is so critical to that. And you'll notice, you know, the more panicked, the more worried, the more anxious, the more angry you are, the more shallow your breathing is. So what you really want to do as you're taking deep breaths is breathe from your diaphragm. So if you kind of put your hand on your chest right now, you'll notice that your chest is kind of rising and falling, you know, as you're breathing, which is the kind of breathing that we've gotten so used to. But what's much more effective in inspiring that calm is breathing from our diaphragm. So now what I want you to do is put your hand on your stomach, and I want you to take a deep breath in. And as you take a breath in, I want you to feel your stomach actually ballooning out. Right? So you're taking a breath in and you're feeling your stomach ballooning out. And as you exhale, you want to feel that balloon deflating. You know, you're letting as much air out as possible. And then again, you breathe in, and for a count of 3 or 4, let that stomach inflate, that balloon expand, let that stomach expand, let that balloon inflate. And as you exhale, again, you want to deflate that balloon. And so we're just going to take 2 breaths in silence. So inhale, deep breath, just expand that balloon, and exhale, deflate. You can even kind of pull your abs back to exaggerate that deflate, and inhale again, and exhale. And so some of you might actually feel a little bit more calm, but if you are, you know, about to present, or you're about to, you know, you get an email, a challenging email, or, you know, your kid asks you for the millionth snack of the day, like, just a really, really great technique is to take deep belly breaths right from your diaphragm. You know, breathing is the reason we're alive, and this is why it grounds us. And if you can, you know, keep your back kind of straight. If you're a meditator, kind of get into that position. If you're sitting in a chair, you want your feet flat on the ground, your legs at a 90-degree angle. But taking those big belly breaths is much more effective than just kind of taking 3 breaths as you normally would.
Thanks for that, Nina. I have to say it actually does work, because last night when my son decided to clean his skateboard wheels and get grease on the carpet, what I did was take deep breaths and walk away. So it really does work. Thank you very much for your time today, Pete and Nina. It's been fantastic hearing your experiences and your advice. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. I so appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Nina.
Absolute pleasure. So next week, we're sticking with the remote working theme. It's new to many of us, and we're still finding out what works and what doesn't in our own lives. And so I thought I would invite someone on who's works at a company who's been at it for a long time, and he's going to share some of his real world experiences and advice around how best to succeed with remote working. So that'll be next week's session. So look out for that on social media and email and all that sort of thing. And once again, Pete, Nina, thank you very much for your time. It's been wonderful. Stay safe, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.